This video is sponsored by Surfshark VPN. Waiting in line for the new iPhone. Let's face it, these days a lot of people do it not because Apple's latest rectangular revision is genuinely transformative, but because it's become a cultural trope. Like leaf watching or trick-or-treating, this particular flavor of apple picking is just one of those things the well-to-do do when autumn rolls around in America.
It's not entirely accurate to say this is the last place I'd like to be, but it's not entirely inaccurate either.
I didn't used to be so jaded by this ritual of conspicuous consumption. For a few years there, the general consensus was that the mobile world had plateaued, the days of crazy innovation well behind us. So who cared if people frittered away a part of their Friday waiting for what essentially was just the same phone with a better camera? That's all most phones were. But here's the thing, that's not where we are anymore. We now live in a world where the phone I use to live tweet my afternoon standing in the Apple Store line literally unfolds into a tablet, a device that really has changed the way I use a smartphone. It's not about Samsung versus Apple, it's about the future versus the past. And on years like this, it sure feels like Apple is on the light side of that particular seesaw. So when I bought the new iPhone to review it, I decided the best use of its improved cameras would be to film a train trip back up north and back in time, to the place I lived for 10 years, the place I started MrMobile, and the last place I waited in line for an iPhone.
I'm Michael Fisher, that's David Kogan, and this is the iPhone 13 Pro road trip review to Boston.
Before we tackle those cameras, let's tour the few things worth mentioning about the new Pro, the refinements that make it a 13 and not a 12. The new side rails gleam in polished stainless steel, the glitz adding extra grams to make this Pro about 8% heavier than last year's. The notch is smaller now, though still painfully apparent if you're used to the hole punches or hidden cameras the competition now carries. And Apple's continued use of Face ID instead of a fingerprint sensor is just as annoying at this phase of masks indoors as it was for the last one. The 120Hz refresh rate on the display is as smooth as everyone says, and it's nice to see it finally come to the iPhone 4 years after making its debut on Android. And those colossal new cameras on the back, coupled with a blue-gray color combo that wouldn't look out of place on the Starship Voyager, gives it a just new enough look. Samey though it is, it's an attractive piece of hardware, manufactured to Apple's typically tight tolerances. I have never encountered a SIM tray with the weighty, metallic precision of the iPhones.
Of course, it doesn't matter to people, not really. What does matter is battery life.
If you caught last year's road trip reviews, you might remember the iPhone's 12 letting me down in both Philadelphia and Mystic, Connecticut, running out of power and storage much earlier than I expected. Well, I solved the storage suffering by maxing out the memory to 1 terabyte this year, and Apple solved the power problem by boosting battery capacity by 10% over last year. That doesn't sound like a lot, but even using the 13 Pro as a mobile hotspot and camera for my entire morning in New York City and train ride, with a small detour to download some socks ticks, stay tuned, I arrived in Boston with over 60% left in the tank after 6 hours. Ultimately, the phone would go on to last me until 1 in the morning that day, 15 and a half hours of heavy, camera-focused usage later. What a shame, though, that when you come to the end of that truly excellent endurance, you still have to carry a special lightning cable just to recharge it. Apple is the last mobile manufacturer to force us to use a proprietary connector instead of USB Type-C, while at the same time acquiescing to the inevitability of that standard on its tablets, and being so committed to Type-C that it omitted every other port from its laptops. In fact, the only thing I like about Lightning is that I hate it so much I fully embraced MagSafe as a kind of spiteful vengeance. It's more than that, of course. I learned over 10 years ago just how satisfying wireless charging can be. Thanks, Palm Pre. And while Qi chargers of every size and shape have since brought that convenience to most Android phones, only Apple has remembered the importance of magnets.
How do they work?
With standard wireless chargers, I've woken up after many a woozy night, with a dead phone because I didn't hit the charging target just right. MagSafe makes sure the phone can't sit on the charger any other way. And it brings that same convenience to topping up the phone while you're out as well. While I've got many bigger and faster battery packs than Apple's, none of them are as quick to attach or as portable as the MagSafe version. The MagSafe battery pack brought my 13 Pro from 0 to 20% in a little over a half hour, and it topped the phone out at 59% before running dry. If you prefer a different kind of convenience, wallets and cases are available at your local Apple store. And speaking of that, I think it's time we shipped off to Boston, right after a word from my sponsor.
Advertisements. They're a fact of life, this one included. But while they may be annoying, they shouldn't be dangerous.
This video is sponsored by Surfshark, which helps protect against those underhanded ads. You know those horrible pop-ups that take over your browser and try to trick you into risky clicks? Well, fun fact, those aren't legitimate ads. They're more like viruses. They're as big a hassle to the sites they infect as they are to you. Surfshark blocks ads and malware before they can even load. That protects you from phishing attempts and cuts down on the clutter when you're browsing. Plus, it comes along with all the standard security that a VPN typically provides to protect your privacy and preserve your access to the open internet, even in countries that try to censor it. Hit up Surfshark at this link and pay as little as $2.49 a month when you sign up for 2 years using the code on your screen. Thanks to Surfshark for sponsoring this video.
What capacity you get, bro?
The smallest one.
Oh, bogus.
I'm a terabyte man myself.
Did you really get a terabyte?
Yeah.
Why? Because I'm going to shoot a lot of footage of your face. We don't have the best seats. We're trying to get some other seats without talking to the people who arranged the seats. I think it's going to work out real well for us. Old man panting intensifies.
4 more stars, got it.
Holy shit. Oh yeah. What the hell were we even doing before?
Hey, we made it.
And we're not thrown out yet. Cheers. No, we're in the best seats you could ask for if you don't care about
Baseball.
the outcome of the game. Of course, I didn't just come here for the socks or the dunks or to prove to David Kogan that Samuel Adams can in fact be part of a balanced breakfast. I came here to show you where I bought my first iPhone.
Back in 2008, the American shopping mall as a concept was already on the decline, but it wasn't in the morbid death spiral it's in now. And the Cambridge Side Galleria had the advantage of being just a block and a half from the office of the first job I had out of college, recording audiobooks on tape for law students.
That's where the sound booth lived.
So I came in way early, all a tingle, on the morning of the iPhone 3G launch day and parked myself right here.
I mean, for all the stuff that's changed since then, my point of view from right here is exactly as it was, with the exception that I was surrounded by other people waiting for the iPhone 3G. I was so excited to get this phone. I remember telling my coworker, I would give up pizza for this, for life, in exchange for being able to carry the iPhone. which I will have to keep in mind more often when I make fun of bandwagoners. But I think the important point that I'm trying to make is that was a device that I feel was worth waiting in line for, and that you really were a part of a moment, a singular moment in mobile history then. Because that's the iPhone, not the first one. The iPhone 3G, the second one, that's the iPhone that changed everything.
Am I being patently unfair by drawing this comparison? Of course. Could any modern phone live up to the impact of the iPhone 3G, the product that popularized not just the smartphone, but the notion of an on-device app store, with an effective price drop of 80% on top of all that thanks to carrier deals? Of course not. Should I just get over myself?
That's enough.
That's enough.
Perhaps. Indeed, no matter what criticisms I levy against the latest gotta-have-it gadget from Apple, nothing I say will change the fact that I bought it. Not just to make this review video, but to help make every MrMobile video going forward. Because I've been using iPhones for run-and-gun B-roll footage on the go, the kind of stuff I don't have the time or patience to set up a real camera for, ever since 2018. No Android phone has ever come close to delivering that kind of utility on the video side. And that utility, by the way, has nothing to do with the iPhone's new cinema mode. Oh, it's fun in theory, impressive from a technical standpoint, and possibly quite useful in future generations of iPhone. But for a deeper description of its usage, I'll refer you to videos like David's, because frankly, I just don't see myself using it at all until it's upgraded in future iterations. Fake depth of field with wonky subject separation at the borders, limited to full HD resolution, it's just not useful. Especially when I can get some pretty okay 4K bokeh without bothering with any of that. Finally, factor in the upgrades Apple made to the still side. Customizable, filter-like shooting modes to approximate the Pixels or Samsungs of the world. Better low-light capture, especially on my favorite, the wide-angle camera. A new macro mode that captures not just the natural consequences of my Boston exertions, but the natural beauty of the Brooklyn Botanic Gardens back home, in the same exquisite detail manufacturers like Huawei have been delivering for years, wandering viewfinder issues aside. And this text scanning feature is pure Apple. When I couldn't remember which Midsummer Night's Dream character said this quote, all I had to do was tap a button to look it up. It's something we've seen on Android phones in limited form before, but it's just so feature-complete and well done on the iPhone. Now, for a little context, I shot alongside a Samsung Galaxy S21 Ultra, and the advantages its dedicated 10x zoom camera brings are still unmistakable. You're just not going to get the same level of quality from the iPhone with its 3x zoom. And even though you sacrifice quality when you push beyond that with the Samsung, sometimes it's worth it. But while Apple can't reach as far, it retains sharpness and contrast much better in low light compared to the Ultra. And that's true even if you don't take zoom into account. It's photos like these that make me happy to own the iPhone 13 Pro instead of just borrow it.
But I'll close by making the point that quite possibly became obvious a few minutes ago. When I bought the 13 Pro, I bought the camera, not the phone around it.
As slick and smooth as iOS can be with its thoughtful little touches, I've grown used to how well my Android phones know me. That's just not the case on the iPhone, whose news widget only occasionally surfaces stories I care at all about, whose Photos widget recently labeled a photo of 2 department store receipts as the best of 2017. Android's voice dictation isn't perfect, but it's been a long time since it got something as wrong as the iPhone 13 Pro did this week. Siri continues to be effectively useless compared to the Google Assistant. And call me crazy, but I prefer a phone where the keyboard actually pops up when I need it. More than any of that, though, I'm sticking with Android because it's the platform that supports the foldables I've now been using for almost 2 years. Despite their continued, very real growing pains, their effect on my mobile usage has been so profound that there's no way I could ever go back to a slab, especially at the price Apple is asking for an upgrade, good though it is, to the thing we've all, let's face it, gotten used to. I want to love the iPhone again, the way I did that 3G from 2008. But that'll only happen once Apple decides to take the lead in the charge to change the way we stay mobile. In the meantime, the iPhone 13 Pro is a very good smartphone, all things considered. One I'm happy to recommend to iOS shoppers with an iPhone 10 or older, assuming you're happy to stick with what works, instead of a phone that changes the game. This video was produced following 7 days with an iPhone 13 Pro purchased by MrMobile. Be sure to check out David Kogan's video on the same phone capturing the same trip to Boston over at The Unlocker. Neither Apple nor any other manufacturer was granted editorial input, copy approval rights, or an early preview of this video. And if you'd like to see more reviews like this, please subscribe to the MrMobile on YouTube. Until next time, thanks for watching, and stay mobile, my friends.